Keith Pompey from the Inquirer joins us. Keith, I guess the moral of the story is the Sixers are ready, willing, and able to move one of their big men.
Yeah, it's kind of something I guess, I think we all knew that, during the basketball season when you watched them and you realized that they really couldn't play together. And, they are trying to move them. But the one thing that I will say, I think that what the Sixers are doing, like if we can talk to any team in the league and we'll get something back. Yes, we're considering, we're in talks with the Sixers, or we had a conversation with the Sixers over said player. And I think at this particular stage, if, these conversations are happening, it's not as if people are going to act on them, but I think that, it's just, they're shopping guys, and they're trying to see what can I get for said player.
Yeah, now the specific deal that was mentioned last night is Noel and Teague as the centerpiece of a deal. What else do you know, or can you add to that, Keith, with that particular deal?
I mean, they're the centerpiece. I was also told that it could be a I was told the teams talked about a multi-player deal. And names that came up was Robert Covington and Nick Stauskas. But again, like both reports said, they're talking to a lot of teams, and they're just trying to get stuff out there. I mean, I'm not coming on here, to say like, on on July 1st, this is going to happen. What I'm saying is that, and everybody knows that, the Sixers are talking to various teams, and teams are inquiring about the Sixers. The thing is, this is what happens. A report comes out saying that the teams around the league, that the Sixers are interested of, getting rid of one of their players, one of their bigs. So the next morning, the opposing general manager will call the Sixers office and say, hey, is it true? And then discussions happen. And they're normally it's just a filler, and then typically right before the draft or something like that is when people, the discussions really start to heat up.
Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer is with us. Now, let me ask you then, do you think that deal makes sense? I mean, do you think a Noel for Teague as the centerpiece guys, the main names I would assume, is that something that you think makes sense for them both age-wise, contractually, and fit?
No, I don't. I mean, and the only reason is just because, you have to be 100% sure if you can re-sign Teague. Now, I do know that the Sixers do need some veterans in there, and Teague could be that. He could be a leader. But at the same time, I mean, you have to know that you're going to be able to bring them back. And it's one of those things where a lot of times, teams won't, they won't do a sign and trade or they won't basically, guarantee Teague, I'm going to guarantee you that I'm going to give you a big time deal when you become an unrestricted free agent, because you don't know what if he gets hurt. If he gets hurt, then you're trying to, you promise this guy a bunch of money and he can't play for you. So it's one of those things. I don't think that it makes sense. I don't. Not now. If he had 2 years left on his contract, yeah, I would make that deal. But I don't think that it makes sense at this particular time.
Yeah, Keith, now, in your opinion, or if you have a feeling one way or the other, do you think the Sixers have a preference of keeping Noel or Okafor? Don't care, just want the best deal?
I don't know. I don't know right now. I think right now what they're doing is they're shopping. They're just trying to see what they can get. And, and it's funny, I'm not, a lot of people, when this stuff comes out, a lot of people are like, oh, man, Nerlens Noel's name is involved in the trade. Well, we kind of knew that they were just going to shop him. So I don't think. Now, as far as a preference, if you want to talk about contractually, I think that it would be easier to move Okafor just because he has a couple years left on his rookie deal. He has 3 years basically left on his rookie contract, whereas Noel was going into his last year. So his second contract, he's going to make way more money. So a team who gets him, they're going to have to deal with him becoming an unrestricted free agent, a restricted free agent, and he's going to be able to, go and see what other team has offers, and they'll have to match them. Whereas Okafor, you'll have him for 3 years, and you can see how that pans out. So it kind of makes more sense to trade Okafor than it does Noel, in my eyes.
Yeah, and I agree with you there too. But not only that, what is your thought on just the way the game is evolving and changing? A guy who is a rim protector, he does something that at a pretty high level that is kind of yearned for in this league. And Okafor, while I'm not taking anything away from him, is his skill something that is in high demand. Even that he does something, his skill is very good. Is it in high demand in today's game?
That's a great question. Some people may say no, but at the same time, Okafor is still a young player. He a lot of times people say your biggest growth comes from your rookie year to your second year. So he could change some things. But, I think it could work, but I just think that, the principles that the Sixers want to utilize, I think that they may have to tweak it a little bit and bring in a different type of power forward, a different type of, a two guard, this and that. I mean, I think they would have to change, totally change what they're doing and to fit it around Okafor so he can be extremely successful. The thing about Noel, like you pointed out, he doesn't have to have the ball. You can have a playmaking point guard, a spot-up shooting, a standout shooting guard. And what Noel can do is he'll run the floor, he'll get a couple dunks, he'll grab rebounds, and he'll block shots, and he'll be happy. Whereas if you have an Okafor, you have to know that it's going to be an inside-outside. So that's the differences. But again, like they say, a lot of guys, their biggest growth comes from their rookie to their sophomore season.
Keith, we were talking earlier, and one takeaway from hearing Noel and Okafor's name, is that a indication to you that they have some faith, more faith in Joel Embiid than many outsiders, fans, and others have?
I mean, I don't know if it's faith, but that it comes to a point where you realize you got to move on. And what I mean by move on is, it's like they're trying to build a team now. So it's those things where it's, okay, if we get Joel Embiid, we know that if healthy, he can be a beast, right? But we're not really going to focus on that right now. Whatever we get from him is a bonus, is a plus. But at this particular time, we have two bigs who can play together. So what we have to do is, if they it's no good to have one on the bench when we can get a two guard, a point guard, or a wing in exchange for him. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And let's face it, so if you do that, and then next thing you know, and if Embiid can get on the court, because no one knows, but if he can get on the court, then that's a bonus.
Keith, obviously the draft, everyone just assumes Simmons, Ingram. Is there a third guy who could wedge his name into the conversation, or is it a two-man race at number one?
I think it's a two-man race at number one. I really think it's a one-man race. I think it's Ben Simmons. I mean, now who knows? The Sixers may see something in Ingram, but I think that at this particular time, when you look at draft picks, your number one pick is the guy who you think who has the biggest upside, a guy who can become a superstar. And if you look at it, yes, Ingram fulfills a need, but Ben Simmons is the guy who can become a superstar. So I think it's him. Now, a lot of people are talking about a third person for that, but I don't think that third person will be for the first pick. I think that third person will be someone who the Sixers can acquire if they trade Embiid not Embiid because he's not going anywhere, but if they trade Okafor or Noel and move back up within the top five, that's where that other person will come into play. But I kind of think you have to go with Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and we'll see. Of course, it's June 23rd. I started off as an Ingram guy. I think I've kind of migrated towards the Simmons side. He's at Pompey on Sixers for more on what should be an eventful Sixers few weeks here leading up to the draft. Keith Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks, Keith.
Can I say just one thing? Can I just say one thing about
Sure.
about all this
Absolutely. Go ahead.
and everything? So, like, think about this. Just think about this. So we're talking about the Sixers, and then, everyone's getting like, uptight about, or everybody's like, I mean, hey, I got to write it too, but we're all talking about like, oh, Atlanta. Now, let's say, like, for instance, if stuff gets leaked, national reporters, right? And you're the Sixers, but you want to move back up in the top 5, right? And everything's quiet now, and you know that you're trying to acquire a draft pick. It doesn't hurt to hear people talk about the Atlanta Hawks or another team trying to acquire one of your players, because that may make a team ahead of you ahead of them in the draft say, hey, I would really love to have Nerlens Noel or Joel Embiid or Jalil Okafor. I keep saying Embiid, he's not going anywhere, or Jalil Okafor. So I think that discussion, it kind of tweaks people, like saying, you know what, let me take a real good hard look at this guy who's projected to go number 3, number 4, number 5, and see if I can get Okafor or Noel. So I think that's kind of like the discussions that's going on around the league. I don't think that these scenarios are basically done deals, so to speak, where everybody's saying, oh, my God, they're going to go get T. But I do think that if I'm like a team in that top 5, I want to say, well, what can I do to get this guy? What can I give up to get this guy? All right?
It's a good point. And, it's a great point. And we know, as you just said, at this time of the year, it's like the NFL free agency. You're just going to hear all sorts of crazy stuff. And the Sixers have so many pieces that was part of the process that got them here, that they have so many things that people are going to call for. So it should be an interesting couple weeks. I don't know that I feel that you're in a good place right now, because you're going to have so much activity. You're going to try to filter out what's real and what's completely off the wall,
Yeah, that's true. When they start talking about people coming from the Chinese basketball league, then I'm like, start hanging up on people.
Hey, Keith, man, I appreciate the time as always.
All right, man. Thank you.